kind of purpose behind the lymphatic system. Oh, by the way, there's that chart over there, which I know you guys were looking at last night. Let me sneak through here. Let me sneak through here and show you that this is another it's another chart of the lymphatic system here. I was trying to see what was on the back, but that's not what we need. So this is another chart of the lymphatic system. Also, it shows a lymph node on it, and you know, some of the duct work and things like that, which are involved in the lymphatic system. So anyway, that one might be one you want to take a look at too. So anyway, so the lymphatic system it's a sort of shadow network of vessels that kind of are very closely associated with the capillaries and stuff like that in our body. And they have many, many important functions in the lymphatic system. So basically what it consists of are very tiny, very small lymphatic vessels, various types of lymphatic tissues, which we'll get to, notably your tonsils and lymph nodes and things like that. Lymphatic organs, the major one in the body is your spleen. And actually lymph, which is a fluid. It's actually a kind of fluid connective tissue. And lymph itself consists of something called interstitial fluid, which you'll see what that is in a minute. It's basically sort of kind of leaked out plasma. Lymphocytes, which are very, very important, both T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. And also macrophages are also found in the lymphatic system because of their primary role in infection fighting. So the lymphatic system is really a very important. This picture is a little hard to see. It's from your book, but the essential idea of it is this. If you look right here, remember in our capillary beds, some of the capillaries are quite leaky. They're called fenestrated capillaries, and fluid can and does leak out under blood pressure. And it's not, red blood cells don't leak out, proteins don't leak out, basically sort of plasma leaks out. And that plasma has to be returned to venous circulation to maintain correct blood volumes. Well, associated with our capillary bed, as you'll see in a better picture in a minute, are the lymphatic vessels, which actually act as almost like a sponge to reabsorb that leaked out fluid, return it back into venous circulation, but on the way they're able to inspect it in the various lymph nodes and inspect, kind of in quotes, inspect it for various foreign things like maybe toxins or viruses or bacteria, things which might do you harm. So it not only picks up the leaked out fluid, but it also does an inspection job as well. Oh boy, that picture. It's actually a little bigger on the screen than it is here. This is a picture from your book. It's the same picture we use in micro. We talk about conditions and diseases in the lymphatic system. So you can see it's a network of very fine vessels which pretty much cover the entire body. Maybe it's not as extensive perhaps as the circulatory system. But in the lymphatic system we find lymph nodes, which sometimes we call glands, which they're not. But the important ones we'll talk about are ones down here in the inguinal region, also up here in the axillary region, and also up here in the cervical region are very important lymph nodes. Also in certain cases, the lymph nodes found associated with the breast tissue can also be very important, especially in things like breast cancer and things like that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So the lymph nodes are sort of primary inspection sites. So what does it do? Well, three things here. The system is involved with production, maintenance, and distribution of lymphocytes, sort of a type of white blood cell, which are on those microscopes over there. Very importantly, they maintain normal blood volume by returning water and various solutes back into venous circulation. Not arterial, but venous circulation. You'll see in a few minutes that the return is at the subclavian veins. And also, the lymphatic system is an alternate route for transport of things like hormones, nutrients, and also waste products are also transported through the lymphatic system. We'll actually talk about this on Thursday night when we get into the digestive system, But the lymphatic system is also associated with your gut. And after a meal which is very high in fat, fat is actually absorbed into our circulatory system, but it's also picked up by the lymphatic system. So after a very fatty meal, your lymph, if you could sample it easily, might be very sort of milky in color because of the lipid associated with it. So it is an alternative route for, not a major, but an alternative route for transport of hormones, nutrients, and waste products. So it does have some really, obviously, very important jobs here. The various structures that we'll be talking about tonight associated with the lymphatic system, the primary and secondary lymphoid structures. The primary lymphoid structures are places where lymphocytes are produced. And of course, lymphocytes are primarily produced, well, they are produced in the bone marrow. But another small gland, which is actually fairly small in adults but large in children, associated quite close to the heart, is the thymus. That's an important lymphoid structure, as you'll see. And also the spleen, which you've seen in your cats, and in humans it's kind of back here along our body wall, is also very important primary lymphatic organ. The secondary lymphatic structures are places where an immune response often begins. We're talking about lymph nodes and tonsils. And you've all had an experience with these. Perhaps not your tonsils, but your lymph nodes. When you go to the doctor and complaining of some, I don't know, something, just vague symptoms or something like that, often what they'll do is go, oh yeah, a little swollen here, that tender, does that hurt? It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, that's an immune response. You do have some sort of infection going on, and now maybe we should look for that infected agent. Maybe it's bacterial, who knows what it could be. So that's places where we get this primary response. Inflamed tonsils as well. It's interesting, we were talking about tonsillectomies last night and how difficult it is in adults. And Ted was telling me later in the evening that he had a bad experience with the tonsillectomy, bleeding, profusely after eating, was it 2 weeks after having not eaten a grilled cheese sandwich. Mm-hmm. Well, when he mentioned that to me, it reminded me that last semester 2 other people in my class whose, I think they were both husbands of students, had had their tonsils out, and both of them at some point in time during their recovery woke up just like blood everywhere. And the one girl said, it's like, oh my gosh, I was so freaked out. It was like there was blood on the sheets, there was blood everywhere, and it was very scary. So tonsillectomies in adults don't always, they often go well. Ted's still here, my students, people were still here, but sometimes when he mentioned that to me, going, oh, I've heard that story before. I don't recall that happening to me as a 5-year-old, however, having my tonsils out, so it can be pretty scary. Now, a couple of pictures here. This picture and this next one, which is even better. But this is a really good picture. It shows you the association between the lymphatic capillaries and the capillaries of the circulatory system. And if you look at the little black arrows on here, here's our capillary bed, here's the arterial side, here's the venous side. But you can see in the capillary bed, we've got little arrows coming out of the capillaries. That's fluid leaking out. And you can see that the little arrows, that in green is the lymphatic system as a contrast here. The little arrows are going back in. So the lymphatic system capillaries are able to recapture this leaked out fluid and return it into venous circulation. So that's one picture of it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, although I think it's in here someplace, like veins, lymphatic capillaries also have valves in them that prevent, backflow. But a little better picture from your book shows you this, it's called interstitial fluid, and see it's leaking out here in the capillaries and being picked up by the lymphatic capillaries, and eventually will be funneled through lymph nodes and back into venous circulation. Without this sort of a system, you'd have like really grossly swollen tissues and things like that. As a matter of fact, I have a picture, I know you've probably seen it in your notes, of a disease called elephantiasis, which is it's a worm actually, which infects a human and gets into